shadows of yesterday. The sound of rain against the windows of Prisha Malhotra's small apartment matched the rhythm of her typing. At 28, she had mastered the art of losing herself in work. Her design portfolio spread across her screen, elegant, spaces transformed by her vision, each one a testament to her rising reputation in Mumbai's interior design scene. Another late night, her roommate Tanvi appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of chai. Prisha accepted the cup with a grateful smile. "This proposal needs to be perfect. Singhania Tech is the biggest client our firm has ever pitched." "Of course it does." Tanvi sat on the edge of Prisha's desk. "But you've been working until midnight every day this week. It's just work." "It's always just work with you." Tanvi's voice softened. "The gallery opening this weekend. Will you at least consider coming? Nikhil's friend will be there, the doctor I told you about." Prisha's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "I told you, I'm not interested in being set up." It's been 2 years, Prisha. 2 years since Aditya had returned her engagement ring over dinner at the restaurant where he'd proposed. 2 years since he'd explained with practiced gentleness that Sunaina's family connections could offer him opportunities that Prisha's middle-class background couldn't. 2 years since she'd learned that love was just another transaction. "I'm focused on my career now," Prisha said, the words automatic. "Some of us don't have family wealth to fall back on." Tanvi sighed. "Not every man is Aditya?" "No, some are. Worse." Prisha turned back to her screen. "I should finish this." After Tanvi left, Prisha's gaze drifted to the small framed photo she kept as a reminder, herself at her college graduation, flanked by her parents. Her father, a high school mathematics teacher, had worked extra tutoring jobs to help fund her design education. Her mother had sewn cushion covers and curtains for neighbors to contribute. Their pride on that day had been boundless. They had been equally supportive when she'd called home in tears after Aditya left. "Beta, you are worth more than how someone else values you," her father had said. Prisha had taken those words and built walls around them, creating a fortress where ambition replaced affection. She'd thrown herself into her work at Dimensions Design Studio, quickly becoming their most requested designer. Her ability to create spaces that felt both luxurious and authentic had caught attention. Now she was finalizing the pitch that could change everything, redesigning the headquarters of Singhania Tech, one of India's fastest-growing technology companies. The founder, Vikram Singhania, had a reputation for being brutally honest and impossible to impress. Some called him arrogant, others called him brilliant. All agreed he accepted nothing less than excellence. "This is strictly business," Prisha reminded herself, reviewing her concepts one last time. She had researched everything about Singhania Tech's corporate culture, their emphasis on transparency, innovation, and sustainable practices. Her designs reflected these values while adding warmth to their currently sterile office environment. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss, Reena. "Meeting moved to 10 a.m. tomorrow. Singhania himself will be there. Bring your A-game." Prisha's stomach tightened. She had expected to present to their facilities team, not the CEO himself. The stakes had just gotten higher. Later, as she finally prepared for bed, Prisha caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but there was determination in them too. She had rebuilt herself after Aditya, focusing on the things she could control. Success, unlike love, had measurable metrics. Design problems had solutions that didn't change their minds or reveal hidden agendas. Tomorrow she would face Vikram Singhania with professionalism and distance, the same approach she'd taken with every man since Aditya. No personal connection, no vulnerability, no chance for disappointment. What she didn't know was that the meeting would be the first tremor in an earthquake that would shake the foundations of every wall she'd built. Part 2. The Man Behind the Empire. The Singania tech headquarters loomed before Prisha, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that dominated Mumbai's financial district skyline. She checked her reflection in her compact mirror one final time, adjusting, her crisp navy blazer and tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The portfolio case containing her presentation felt heavy in her hands, weighted with expectation. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, a ritual that had become habit before important meetings. The security guard directed her to the executive elevator, which whisked her to the 30th floor with dizzying speed. The doors opened to reveal a stark reception area, all chrome, white marble, and uncomfortable-looking furniture. It embodied the cold efficiency Singanaya Tech was known for, but lacked any sense of humanity. "Ms. Malhotra?" A young man in a perfectly tailored suit approached. "I'm Naveen, Mr. Singhania's chief of staff. They're waiting for you in the main conference room." As she followed him through a labyrinth of identical corridors, Prisha observed everything with a designer's eye. The space was impressive but uninspiring, clinical almost, with harsh lighting that created shadows under the eyes of every employee they passed. No wonder they wanted a redesign. "Fair warning," Naveen murmured, as they approached a set of frosted glass doors. "Mr. Singhania is in a mood today. The Singapore deal fell through this morning." Before Prisha could respond, he pushed open the doors to reveal a long conference table surrounded by men and women in business attire. At the head sat a man whose presence commanded the room despite his stillness. Vikram Singhania didn't look up as she entered, his attention fixed on the tablet before him. At 35, he had built Singhania Tech from a small startup into one of India's most valuable companies. His success was legendary, his temperament infamous. "Ms. Malhotra from Dimensions Design Studio," Naveen announced. Vikram finally glanced up, his dark eyes assessing her with unnerving intensity. "You're younger than I expected," he said without preamble. Prisha had prepared for many potential openings, but not this one. "Age and capability aren't always correlated, Mr. Singhania," she replied evenly, "as your own career demonstrates." A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, crossed his face, quickly replaced by his previous impassive expression. "Fair point. Show us what you've prepared." For the next 30 minutes, Prisha presented her vision for transforming Singhania Tech's corporate headquarters. She outlined how the current sterile environment could be reimagined to foster both innovation and well-being, incorporating elements of biophilic design alongside cutting-edge technology. "Your lobby currently says, 'We're successful,'" she explained, displaying a 3D rendering on the projection screen. "But it doesn't say anything about who you are as a company. My design tells your story, from humble beginnings to industry leader, but with an emphasis on human connection and transparency." Throughout her presentation, she was acutely aware of Vikram's unwavering attention. Unlike the other executives, who occasionally checked their phones or whispered to one another, he remained completely focused, his expression unreadable. When she finished, a brief silence filled the room before Reena, her boss, spoke up. "We've prepared cost projections and implementation timelines for your review." "I have questions first," Vikram interrupted, leaning forward. "Ms. Malhotra, you've proposed removing the executive offices from the top floor and creating an open collaborative space there instead. Explain." Prisha met his gaze directly. "Your company values state that innovation comes from all levels. Yet your current layout physically reinforces hierarchy, with executives isolated at the top, removed from the daily operations. My design aligns your physical space with your stated values." "And where would the executives work in this utopian vision?" His tone was skeptical, but not dismissive. "Integrated throughout the building, in spaces designed for focused work when needed, but primarily in the collaborative areas alongside their teams." She brought up another rendering. "These glass-walled meeting pods provide privacy without isolation." A muscle tightened in Vikram's jaw. You're suggesting I give up my corner office with its view of the entire city. I'm suggesting you gain perspective on the company you've built by being part of it, not above it. The words left her mouth before she could temper them, and a collective intake of breath around the table told her she'd crossed a line. To everyone's surprise, Vikram laughed, a short, genuine sound that transformed his severe features. "Refreshingly direct," he said, "a quality I appreciate, though my board might disagree." He glanced at the others. "Leave us, please. I'd like to speak with Ms. Malhotra alone." As the room cleared, Prisha fought to maintain her composure. This wasn't the protocol she'd expected. When the door closed behind the last executive, Vikram stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawled below. "Do you know why I agreed to meet with Dimensions when 3 larger firms were vying for this project?" he asked, his back to her. "I assumed our reputation for innovative design." "Your personal portfolio," he interrupted, turning to face her. "Specifically the community center you designed in Dharavi. Low budget, high impact. You transformed a utilitarian space into something dignified and uplifting." Prisha blinked in surprise. The Dharavi project had been a pro bono effort, completed during weekends and evenings alongside her regular workload. It had meant more to her than any luxury home or corporate office she'd designed, but she hadn't expected someone like Vikram Singhania to even notice it. "That project was important to me," she said carefully. "Why?" The question was direct, his gaze searching. "Because design isn't just for those who can afford it," she answered honestly. "Beauty and functionality shouldn't be luxuries." He nodded slowly. "My father was a factory worker in Pune. We lived in 2 rooms with unreliable electricity and shared toilets. I built this company from nothing, Ms. Malhotra, but somewhere along the way, I created an environment that resembles a museum more than a workplace." He gestured to the stark conference room around them. "I want this redesign to remind everyone, myself included, that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around." For the first time, Prisha saw beyond the intimidating CEO to the self-made man beneath. His admission revealed a depth she hadn't anticipated. "That's exactly what I've tried to capture in my design," she said, surprised by the connection she suddenly felt to this project. "Technology without humanity is just machinery. Your spaces should reflect both." Vikram studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected, Ms. Malhotra. Neither are you, Mr. Singhania." A faint smile touched his lips. "Vikram, please." He returned to the table, gathering the materials from her presentation. "I want to move forward with your proposal, with one condition." "Which is?" "You personally oversee the entire project. Not an associate, not a team. You." His tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. "I don't want the vision diluted in execution." The request was unusual but flattering. Still, something about his intensity made Prisha hesitate. "That would require a significant time commitment. I have other clients. I'll compensate your firm accordingly," he said, waving away her concern. "This headquarters houses 5,000 employees. The environment they work in shapes not just their productivity, but their well-being. I won't entrust that to anyone but the person whose vision convinced me to give up my corner office." His last words carried a hint of humor. Prisha recognized the opportunity before her. A project of this scale could define her career, and Vikram's unexpected depth intrigued her professionally. Yet she sensed that working closely with him would test the careful boundaries she'd established since Aditya. "I accept," she said finally, "but I'll need complete creative control." "Within budget constraints," he countered. "Within reasonable budget constraints," she amended. "And I'll need direct access to you for approvals. No going through layers of management." He extended his hand. "Agreed. I appreciate someone who knows their worth, Ms. Malhotra." "Prisha," she corrected, taking his hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm against hers. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through her that she immediately suppressed. "We'll start on Monday," he said. 8 a.m. As she gathered her materials to leave, he added, "One more thing. That community center in Dharavi, I've arranged for similar facilities to be built in 5 other neighborhoods. I'd appreciate your input on those projects as well." Prisha paused, genuinely surprised. "That's not what I expected from Singhania Tech. There's a lot about me and my company that might surprise you," he replied, his expression unreadable once more. "I look forward to working together, Prisha." As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Prisha tried to reconcile the man she'd just met with his formidable reputation. Vikram Singhania was undeniably intimidating, but there was something else there, a genuine commitment to improvement, an unexpected social conscience, and most surprising of all, a willingness to be challenged. For the first time in years, Prisha felt a flicker of something beyond professional interest, a curiosity about the man behind the empire. She quickly extinguished it, reminding herself of the lessons she'd learned from Aditya. This was a professional opportunity, nothing more. Vikram Singhania might be different from what she expected, but he was still a client, and maintaining that boundary was non-negotiable. What she didn't realize, as she stepped out into the bright Mumbai afternoon, was that some boundaries are easier to maintain than others, especially when confronted with the disarming power of simple truth. Back at her apartment that evening, Prisha created a dedicated workspace for the Singhania project, pinning inspiration images and material samples to her corkboard. When Tanvi returned from her shift at the hospital, she found Prisha surrounded by sketches, completely absorbed. "I'm guessing the meeting went well?" Tanvi asked, dropping her bag on the sofa. Prisha looked up, realizing she'd been working for hours without a break. "Better than expected. I got the project and I'll be the lead designer." "That's incredible," Tanvi exclaimed. "Wait, does this mean you'll be working directly with Vikram Singhania? The papers call him Mumbai's most brilliant recluse." "He's hardly a recluse," Prisha replied, remembering his intense gaze. "Reserved, perhaps. Direct, definitely. But there's more to him than the media portrays." Tanvi raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you made quite an impression on each other." "It's purely professional," Prisha insisted, turning back to her sketches. But as she worked late into the night, she couldn't help wondering what other surprises awaited her behind the glass walls of Singhania Tech. Cracks in the armor. 3 weeks into the Singhania Tech project, Prisha found herself standing on the rooftop garden of the corporate headquarters, watching the sunset paint Mumbai's skyline in gold. The space was taking shape exactly as she had envisioned, a tranquil oasis 15 floors above the chaos of the city streets. "It's already transforming," came a deep voice behind her. Prisha turned to find Vikram watching her, his usual crisp suit replaced by dark jeans and a simple button-down, with rolled sleeves. Without the formal attire, he looked younger, more approachable. "Mr. Singhania, I didn't expect you here this late." She straightened, instinctively adopting her professional demeanor. "Vikram," he corrected as he had several times before. "And I could say the same to you. It's nearly 8. I wanted to see how the lighting would look at dusk." She gestured to the newly installed fixtures that cast a warm glow across the native plants. "The transition from natural to artificial light is important for the ambiance." He nodded, approaching to stand beside her at the railing. "You don't just design spaces, do you? You think about how people will feel in them." "That's the entire point of good design," she replied. "It's not just aesthetics, it's experience." The evening breeze carried the scent of the jasmine she'd insisted on planting. For a moment, neither spoke, the city's distant hum filling the silence between them. "My team tells me you refused the dinner invitation," Vikram said finally. Prisha tensed. The project managers had invited her to a celebration dinner after completing the first phase ahead of schedule. She'd declined, citing other commitments. "I had plans," she said simply. "With your drafting table?" His tone wasn't accusatory, merely observant. When she shot him a surprised look, he smiled faintly. "Naveen mentioned you're always the first in and last out. Reminds me of someone I know well. You built a billion-dollar company. I'm just doing my job." "We're both hiding in our work," he said, the statement so direct that Prisha nearly flinched. "The question is why?" She turned to face him fully. "With all due respect, that's rather presumptuous. I prefer perceptive." His dark eyes held hers steadily. "You've redesigned 4 floors of my building in record time. Your attention to detail is remarkable. But you avoid every social interaction, keep conversations strictly professional, and literally step back when anyone stands too close." "I'm here to work, not socialize," she said stiffly. "So am I. But I've learned the hard way that work alone is a poor substitute for living." Something in his expression shifted, revealing a brief glimpse of something raw beneath his composed exterior. Prisha looked away, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "The planters should be delivered tomorrow. I should get back to finalizing the furniture placement for the communal workspace." Instead of letting her retreat, Vikram surprised her. "Have dinner with me." "I don't think that's appropriate." "Not as a date," he clarified quickly. "As 2 people who could both use a meal that isn't eaten at a desk. The rooftop restaurant at the Grand Palace Hotel has a view almost as good as this one." Prisha hesitated. Every instinct told her to maintain the professional boundaries she'd established. Yet something about his straightforward manner disarmed her usual defenses. "Just dinner," she found herself saying, "and we discuss the project." "If that's what you need to tell yourself." The hint of a smile played at the corner of his mouth. The restaurant was as impressive as promised, with a panoramic view of the Arabian Sea. They were seated at a cornered table that offered both privacy and perspective. Prisha had changed into the spare outfit she kept at the office for client meetings, suddenly self-conscious about her practical work clothes. Over appetizers, they discussed the project as agreed, but as their main courses arrived, Vikram steered the conversation elsewhere. "Tell me about the worst design you've ever created," he asked. The unexpected question made her laugh. "My first apartment after college. I was so eager to apply everything. I'd learned that I tried 6 different design concepts in one tiny space. It was a disaster. Moroccan meets Scandinavian meets industrial loft. I'd like to have seen that." "No, you wouldn't. It was truly hideous." She smiled, surprising herself with how easily the conversation flowed. "What about you? Worst business decision?" "Hiring my brother-in-law," he answered without hesitation. "Family and business rarely mix well. He nearly bankrupted our first startup with his reckless investments." "Is that why you have a reputation for being ruthlessly honest?" He raised an eyebrow. "Partly. I learned early that sugarcoating problems doesn't solve them. But it's more than that." He paused, swirling the wine in his glass. 8 years ago, I was engaged to someone I thought shared my values. Turns out she was more interested in the lifestyle she thought I could provide than in building something real together. The revelation hit uncomfortably close to home. "What happened?" "I overheard her on the phone with her mother, discussing how she'd convince me to sell my company and settle into something more prestigious. As if the work I'd poured my heart into was just a stepping stone to the life she really wanted." His expression darkened briefly. "After that, I decided honesty was non-negotiable in all my relationships, business or personal." Prisha felt the walls she'd carefully maintained beginning to crack. His experience mirrored her own in a way she hadn't expected. "I was engaged too," she heard herself say. "He left when a better opportunity came along, a woman whose family connections could advance his career faster than my middle-class background." Vikram's eyes met hers, a moment of recognition passing between them. His profound stupidity was your good fortune then. How do you figure that? You escaped building a life with someone who measured love in social currency. He spoke with such conviction that Prisha felt something shift inside her. Though I suspect he did damage on his way out. She looked down at her plate. I prefer to think of it as clarity. I learned what matters. And what's that? Independence, self-reliance. The words felt hollow as she spoke them. Is that why you've turned your career into a fortress? His question was gentle despite its directness. Before she could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much, Vikram continued, For what it's worth, I did the same. Work became my refuge. Easier to control than relationships. His honesty disarmed her. This wasn't the arrogant billionaire from the business magazines. This was someone who understood the particular kind of pain she'd experienced and wasn't afraid to acknowledge his own vulnerabilities. As the evening progressed, Prisha felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the comfort of being truly seen. Truth in the storm. The monsoon arrived with a vengeance, sheets of rain hammering against the windows of Sinkanaya Tech's 15th floor. Prisha stood in the newly completed conference room, surrounded by Vikram's executive team as they unveiled their latest product, a revolutionary AI platform for healthcare. Our launch event is in 3 weeks, Naveen, the marketing director, explained. We want to showcase not just the technology, but our new corporate identity that Prisha has helped create. Prisha felt a flutter of pride. The transformation of Sinkanaya Tech's headquarters had garnered attention in design circles, with several publications requesting features. More importantly, employees had responded enthusiastically to their reimagined workspace. Her gaze drifted to Vikram, who stood slightly apart from the group, his attention fixed on his phone. His brow was furrowed, jaw tight with tension. Something was wrong. The meeting concluded, and the executives filed out, leaving Prisha gathering her materials. Vikram remained, still staring at his screen. Is everything all right? She asked, approaching, cautiously. He looked up, his expression grim. No, we have a serious problem. He hesitated before adding, I shouldn't involve you in this. You already have, she pointed out. By looking like the world is ending during our meeting. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Fair enough. He gestured for her to sit. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Prisha nodded, setting aside her portfolio. Our security team just discovered that someone has been accessing our servers, specifically the code for the healthcare platform we're launching. We believe it's a competitor trying to beat us to market. That's industrial espionage, Prisha said, shocked. It's worse than that. The platform contains proprietary algorithms for diagnosing rare diseases. If a rushed, improperly tested version reaches hospitals, he didn't need to finish the thought. What will you do? Vikram ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. The board wants to proceed with the launch. They believe we can still be first to market if we accelerate our timeline. But you disagree. Lives could be at risk if this technology is implemented incorrectly. We need to identify the breach, secure our systems, and ensure the product is ready, even if it means delaying the launch and taking a financial hit. The conviction in his voice reminded Prisha of their dinner conversation. Honesty above all else, even when difficult. The board meeting is tomorrow morning, he continued. I could lose control of the company I built if enough shareholders side against me. Prisha studied him. Why are you telling me this? I'm just your interior designer. His dark eyes met hers. Because in the past month, you've become more than that. You've become someone I trust. The simple declaration hung between them, weighted with meaning. Since their dinner, they had fallen into a comfortable routine, working late, sharing meals, discussing everything from design philosophy to childhood memories. Boundaries had blurred, yet Prisha had maintained her emotional distance, telling herself their connection was merely professional respect. Now, faced with his trust during his darkest professional hour, that pretense felt hollow. "What can I do?" she asked. "Nothing. I just—" He paused. "I wanted someone to know the truth, whatever happens tomorrow." The vulnerability in his admission struck her deeply. This man, who commanded an empire, was sharing his fears with her, not asking for solutions, just offering truth. Outside, lightning flashed across the Mumbai skyline, illuminating the rain-slicked windows. Prisha made a decision. "I'll be there," she said firmly. "Where?" "At your board meeting. I'll present the final phase of the headquarters redesign, the executive floor and innovation lab. It's ready ahead of schedule." Confusion crossed his face. "That wasn't on the agenda." "It is now." She pulled out her tablet, already drafting an email to the board secretary. "Your headquarters transformation represents Singania Tech's commitment to transparency and integrity, values that should extend to your product launches as well." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're creating context for my position. I'm showing them the physical manifestation of your company's ethos. The rest is up to you." She met his gaze steadily. "I believe in what you've built here, Vikram. Not just the company, but the principles behind it." For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. Then, unexpectedly, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch sent warmth spreading through her veins. "Thank you," he said simply. That night, Prisha worked until dawn, refining her presentation, selecting imagery that emphasized transparency, ethical innovation, and patient safety. When she finally returned to her apartment to change clothes, Tanvi emerged from her bedroom, surprised to find Prisha home. "You look terrible," Tanvi observed. "And determined." "What's happening?" Prisha hesitated, then said, "I'm helping someone fight for what they believe in." Tanvi studied her friend's face. "This is about him, isn't it? The CEO you've been just working with for weeks now." "It's complicated." "It always is?" Tanvi smiled knowingly. "But I haven't seen you care this much about anything except design in years." The board meeting was tense from the outset. 12 executives sat around a massive table, skepticism evident on their faces as Vikram outlined his concerns about the security breach and proposed delaying the launch. "The market won't wait, Vikram," argued Sudhir Mehta, the largest shareholder, after Vikram himself. "If we delay, our competitors will release similar technology and our advantage disappears." "Along with our integrity," Vikram countered. "The platform isn't ready." "The numbers disagree," said another board member, sliding financial projections across the table. "The potential loss from delay—" "Before we continue," Vikram interrupted, "I've invited Prisha Malhotra to present the completion of our headquarters transformation. I believe it's relevant to our discussion." All eyes turned to Prisha as she entered. She felt their judgment. Who was this designer to interrupt their crisis? But drew strength from Vikram's steady gaze. For 20 minutes, she walked them through her designs, emphasizing how each element reflected Singania Tech's core values. She concluded by unveiling the reimagined innovation lab where the healthcare platform had been developed. "The glass walls aren't just aesthetic," she explained. "They represent your commitment to transparency in all you do. The collaborative spaces show your belief that the best solutions come from open exchange, and these materials, sustainable, honest, built to last, reflect a company that values longevity over quick profits." She turned to face the board directly. "You've invested millions in creating a physical space that embodies integrity. The question is whether that investment was merely cosmetic or if it represents who you truly are." A heavy silence fell over the room. Prisha's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression composed. She had stepped far beyond her role as designer, and the risk felt enormous. Finally, Sudhir leaned forward. Impressive conviction. Ms. Malhotra, almost as impressive as your designs. He turned to Vikram. She makes a compelling point about our brand integrity. Perhaps a short delay to ensure security and quality would align better with our values. One by one, the board members nodded in agreement. The vote was unanimous. The launch would be postponed until the security breach was identified and the YASO platform properly vetted. As the meeting adjourned, Vikram caught Prisha's eye across the room, his expression a mixture of gratitude and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. Later, as rain continued to lash against the windows, they stood, alone in his office. That was either very brave or completely reckless, he said, but his voice held admiration. I learned from someone who values truth above convenience, she replied. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Prisha. He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. What you did today went far beyond professional obligation. Yes, she admitted, no longer able to pretend otherwise. It did. Why? The question hung between them, demanding honesty. She had denied herself for 2 years. The walls she had built were crumbling, and for the first time, she didn't try to reinforce them. Because you showed me that truth is stronger than fear, she said softly. Even when it's terrifying. Lightning flashed again, illuminating his face as he reached for her hand, his touch both a question and an answer. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the walls of glass and steel they had created together, a different kind of truth was taking shape, one built on honesty, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable again. Building something real. Morning light filtered through the sheer curtains of Prisha's bedroom, casting patterns across the sketches scattered on her floor. For the first time in years, her drafting table sat untouched. Instead, she lay awake, watching the sunrise paint colors across Mumbai's skyline. 6 months had passed since the board meeting that changed everything, not just for Singhania Tech, but for her. The security breach had been traced to a disgruntled former employee who had been attempting to sell company secrets. The healthcare platform had launched successfully after proper testing, saving Vikram's position and cementing his reputation for ethical leadership. And Prisha? She had taken the most terrifying leap of all, opening her heart again. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Vikram. Good morning. Meeting at 10. Don't be late. I love you. She smiled at his characteristically direct communication. 3 simple statements. One practical, one teasing, one profound. In those words lay the essence of their relationship. Honesty, humor, and an unguarded heart. The journey hadn't been simple. After that rain-soaked evening in his office, when the barriers between them had finally fallen, they'd agreed to move carefully. Both carried scars that required healing. I won't make promises about forever, Vikram had told her that night, but I can promise you truth. Every day we choose this. It was that commitment to truth that had ultimately allowed Prisha to trust again. No grand romantic gestures or flowery declarations, just consistent honesty, even when it was difficult. Her phone buzzed again. Bring the coastal property sketches. Ever the businessman, even on Saturday. The meeting was actually breakfast with Vikram's sister Divya and her children at his beachfront home in Juhu. Prisha had been redesigning a vacation property that Vikram had purchased, a small villa on the Konkan coast. It had become their project together, a place that would belong to both of them, reflecting their shared vision. Tanvi emerged from her bedroom as Prisha gathered her things to leave. Another weekend with the billionaire? She teased. His name is Vikram, Prisha corrected automatically, though she smiled. I know. Tanvi leaned against the doorframe. It's just still surreal sometimes. My roommate dating one of India's most eligible bachelors. Dating sounds so temporary, Prisha mused. It's more than that. Tanvi's expression softened. I know that too. I haven't seen you this happy since, well, ever actually. He makes me brave, Prisha said simply. It was true. Vikram's unwavering honesty had challenged her to face her own fears about vulnerability. He had never tried to tear down her walls. Instead, he had stood patiently beside them until she felt safe enough to dismantle them herself. The taxi ride to Juhu gave Prisha time to reflect on the transformation of her life. Professionally, her work on Singhania Tech had catapulted her career. She had been promoted to design director at her firm and had started teaching a guest course at her alma mater on corporate space psychology. Personally, the change was even more profound. The woman who had once defined herself by her independence now found strength in connection. She had learned that true self-reliance wasn't about isolation, but about choosing relationships that fostered growth rather than dependency. As the taxi pulled up to Vikram's sleek beachfront home, she spotted him on the terrace, deep in conversation, with a small boy, his nephew, Arjun. Vikram was pointing toward the horizon, explaining something with animated gestures that contrasted with his usual reserved demeanor. The sight made her heart swell. This was the Vikram few people saw, thoughtful, gentle, capable of immense kindness beneath his direct exterior. He looked up as she approached, his serious expression warming. "You're early," he said by way of greeting, but his eyes conveyed much more. "A good designer is always punctual," she replied, setting down her portfolio case. Arjun tugged at her hand. "Aunt Prisha, Uncle Vikram says you're designing a house with secret passages. Can I see?" She laughed, still adjusting to being called Aunt by Vikram's family. "Not secret passages exactly, but there are some special features. Want to look at the drawings?" As she showed Arjun her sketches, Vikram's sister Divya joined them, carrying a tray of chai. "He's been waiting all morning to see you," Divya said, nodding toward her son. "Apparently being a designer is much more impressive than running a technology empire." "Clearly the boy has excellent taste," Vikram remarked, accepting a cup from his sister. Later, after breakfast and a walk along the beach with Divya's children, Prisha and Vikram found themselves alone on the terrace. The Arabian Sea stretched before them, vast and shimmering in the midday sun. "Your sister asked when we're moving in together," Prisha said, watching his reaction carefully. Vikram turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "What did you tell her?" "That we're building something, at our own pace." She twined her fingers with his. "That some things are worth taking time to get right." He nodded, squeezing her hand. "She means well. Traditional timelines are important to her. And to you? You know I care more about substance than schedule." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small item, placing it on the table between them. "But I did want to give you this." It wasn't a ring box, as part of her had irrationally feared. It was a key, simple, unadorned. "To the coastal house," he explained. "The renovation will be finished next month. I've put it in both our names." Prisha stared at the key, understanding the significance. This wasn't a marriage proposal, but something equally meaningful. A tangible symbol of his commitment to building a future together. "That's a significant decision," she said carefully. "I make those every day." His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes held warmth. "Few have ever felt this right." She picked up the key, feeling its weight in her palm. 2 years ago, I would have run from this. I know. You made an art form of keeping people at a professional distance." A smile played at the corner of his mouth. "It was infuriating." "You weren't exactly approachable yourself," she countered. "The stern CEO who terrified his executives." "We were both hiding," he acknowledged. "Me behind bluntness, you behind politeness. And now? Now we're building something real." He gestured toward her portfolio, where plans for their shared home lay between them. Not just the house. Prisha thought about the journey that had brought them here. From her first presentation in the Singania Tech boardroom to this moment of quiet intimacy beside the sea. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but every step had been grounded in truth. "I used to think love was fragile," she said, her voice soft against the sound of waves, "that it could be broken by one betrayal, one disappointment." "And now?" Vikram asked, his expression open and attentive in the way that had first breached her defenses. "Now I think real love is built, not found," she replied. "Constructed day by day, with honesty as its foundation." He nodded, understanding as he always did. "That's why I've never said we're meant to be or talk about destiny. What we have is a choice we make each day, to be truthful, to be present, to keep building." "It's not very romantic, put that way," she teased. "Isn't it?" His eyes held hers. "I find it far more meaningful to choose you deliberately than to claim some cosmic force did the choosing." In that moment, looking at this man who had never tried to win her with pretty lies or grand gestures, who had instead offered consistent truth and unwavering support, Prisha felt the last of her reservations dissolve. "I love you," she said, simply. "Not because you're perfect, or because our relationship is. I love you because with you, I never have to question what's real." His expression softened, the rare vulnerability that he showed only to her evident in his gaze. "And I love you because you rebuilt yourself after being broken and had the courage to let me in despite every reason not to." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers over the key that represented their shared future. "So, Ms. Malhotra, shall we build something that lasts?" She smiled, feeling not the giddy rush of infatuation, but something deeper and more sustainable, the quiet certainty of having found solid ground after years adrift. "Yes," she said, "let's build something real." Later that evening, as they walked along the shore at sunset, Prisha reflected on the story they were writing together. It wasn't the fairy tale romance she had dreamed of in her youth, with its perfect prince and happily ever after ending. It was something more valuable, a partnership forged in truth, strengthened by honesty, and built to weather whatever storms might come. The walls she had constructed around her heart hadn't been demolished in a dramatic moment of passion. Instead, they had been carefully dismantled, brick by brick, by a man whose commitment to truth had proven stronger than her fear of being hurt again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Vikram's hand found hers. No words were needed in that moment, just the simple truth of two people who had chosen each other, who continued to choose each other, and who were building a love as honest as it was real. In the fading light, with the sound of waves providing a gentle backdrop to their silence, Prisha knew that this thoughtful, deliberate love was the most beautiful design she had ever created.